Today, we're diving into a story that's just wild. It's about a wrongful conviction, sure, but it's also about a decade of a man's life just gone, wiped out. And the craziest part? The whole thing unraveled because of one single hidden file found completely by chance that exposed a conspiracy reaching all the way to the top.
Imagine being in that courtroom. Jason Garrett just screaming, "I didn't kill them." The jury's right there, about to decide his entire future. But even with him pleading like that, the evidence they presented, it looked absolutely damning.
And just like that, guilty. The hammer comes down. Jason Garrett is convicted for this brutal double homicide. His ex-girlfriend, Jewel Starkey, and her new boyfriend, Dr. Philip Feltz. His life, as he knew it, was just over. Sentenced to life in prison.
So, you gotta be asking, right? How does an innocent guy get a life sentence? Well, let's break down what the prosecution actually told the jury, because you have to see this from their perspective. On the surface, this case looked absolutely airtight, a total slam dunk. Okay, so the prosecution lays it all out for the jury, nice and simple. First, motive. They had a really nasty custody battle going on over their son. Check. Opportunity? Well, he's the ex-boyfriend, and he couldn't tell them where he was that night. No alibi. Check. And then the big one, physical evidence. They had what seemed like a smoking gun. Literally. The victim's blood found in his car, and get this, the actual murder weapon just sitting in his driveway. With all that, yeah, it was more than enough to get that guilty verdict. All right, so fast forward 10 years, a whole decade. Jason Garrett is in prison, and this case is basically a closed book. But then, everything changes. A new person steps into the picture, and her name is Caroline Rollins. She's the daughter of Garrett's original defense lawyer. So Caroline's taken over her dad's law practice after he passed away. She's just, cleaning up, organizing his old office. And as she's moving some books, this dusty old manila folder just slips out from between them. It wasn't with the rest of the official case files, but it had Jason Garrett's name written on it. And what was inside? Well, it was about to change everything. So she opens it up. The first thing she sees is this partial lab report, filled with these weird numbers she doesn't recognize at all. The second thing is a super grainy photo from an ATM, showing a car, and it's dated the night of the murders. But here's the absolute kicker. Neither of these things were ever mentioned at the trial. They were never entered into evidence. They'd been hidden. Okay, so now Caroline has these two little threads, and she starts to pull on them. And the more she pulls, the more the entire official story, the one that put a man away for life, just starts to completely unravel at the seams. So that lab report, that was the first bombshell. Caroline gets an expert to look at those strange numbers, and what they find is just mind-blowing. The report showed that the blood smudge in Garrett's car, the key piece of evidence, it had these biomarkers in it. And those biomarkers meant the blood had been frozen. It came from a frozen source, something called cryoprecipitate, which is a blood product. Think about that for a second. How could frozen blood end up at a crime scene? Fresh blood from a struggle, from a murder? It wouldn't have those markers. No way. This wasn't just a mistake or some kind of mishandled evidence. This was proof. The blood was planted. The question now was, who planted it? Okay, so next up is that ATM photo. Caroline digs into it. She finds a retired bank teller who remembers that night perfectly. He says the ATM snapped about 50 photos, catching every single car that drove by near the murder scene. And he says he handed all 50 of those photos to a young officer on the case, a guy named Rodney Pratt, who, by the way, is now the police chief. But here's the thing. At the trial, the bank, which was run by the victim's own father, Carl Starkey, they told the court there was a technical glitch and most of the photos were lost. A glitch? Come on, that sounds way too convenient. So you start putting these pieces together, right? The frozen blood, the missing photos. Caroline realizes this isn't just a series of mistakes. This was planned. This was a conspiracy. She goes to see Jason in prison, and something he said 10 years ago suddenly makes perfect, chilling sense. He tells her they searched the same spot, and they find the gun. It was right in the driveway. I think it was planted by the police. They'd searched all night, found nothing, and then poof, the next day, there it is. He knew it was planted from the very beginning. And then she gets the confession that blows the whole thing wide open.
Caroline tracks down this guy, Roy Crawford, one of the original investigators on the case, and he spills everything. He was so disgusted because the local establishment, as he called it, wanted Garrett convicted, period. So he took that envelope with a real lab report and the photo, and he secretly left it on her dad's desk. He was hoping her father would figure it out. The day after Garrett was convicted, Crawford quit the police force. He just couldn't be a part of it anymore. This is where the story goes from a cover-up to something out of a movie. That woman in the ATM photo, Caroline finally identifies her. It's Heather Rockwell, the sister-in-law of one of the victims, Dr. Feltz. And check out this timeline. Right after the murders, she's photographed driving away from the scene. Then, poof, she vanishes after the funeral. A year later, she's in Colorado getting major reconstructive surgery. She reemerges with a whole new identity, calling herself Madison. And then, in the most unbelievable move I've ever heard, she marries Carl Starkey, the father of the other victim. The killer literally married into the victim's family to hide in plain sight. It's just, wow. So here's the whole diabolical master plan. The mastermind? That was Janet Feltz, Dr. Feltz's own wife. She planned the whole thing from Morocco. Why? Money, of course. She wanted his fortune. Her sister, Heather, was the one who did the dirty work. She carried out the killings and planted all that evidence. And Jason Garrett? He was just the perfect fall guy, the patsy. His very public, very ugly custody battle made him the easiest person in the world to frame. So, after 10 long years, the truth is finally out. And those wheels of justice, which had been frozen in place for a decade, they finally start to turn again. A judge immediately grants a new trial. The reason is something called a Brady violation, which is a huge deal. It basically means the prosecution illegally hid evidence that could have proven Jason was innocent. And with this whole conspiracy laid bare, it was a no-brainer. Jason Garrett's conviction was overturned. He was free. And Heather Rockwell, now Madison Starkey, and Police Chief Rodney Pratt were arrested for murder and for the cover-up. You know, with all the legal talk and the crazy plot twists, it's easy to lose sight of the real cost here. And it's just this simple, heartbreaking number. 10. 10 years. That's how long Jason Garrett spent in prison for a crime he did not commit. 10 years of his life, gone forever. 10 years he couldn't be a father to his son. And what happens next is just, it's a testament to the kind of person Jason is, and what has to be one of the most incredible displays of grace I've ever heard of. One of the first things he does when he gets out is meet with Carl Starkey, the man whose power and influence helped put him away. And Jason looks him in the eye and says, "I want you to know I forgave you a long time ago." Just amazing. He chose forgiveness over a decade's worth of anger. So yeah, Jason Garrett's story is incredible. It's about justice finally being served. But it also leaves us with this really chilling question, doesn't it? It makes you wonder, how does critical, life-altering evidence just get lost in our justice system? In a system that's supposed to be all about finding the truth, how can it be so easy for a few powerful people to bury it?